Hello, good evening, and welcome. Third time lucky here for chapter 11. Do let me know if you're watching and listening, if the sound is okay. Fingers crossed it is, and if it's not, then this is a bigger issue than I first thought. So, fingers crossed, and if you're here watching and listening, do let me know how the sound is for you. And then once someone lets me know, hopefully it's okay. Okay, Tahoara from the future. Graham says sound okay. The sound is okay by the sounds of it now. And so, God willing, we can get through this reading without the sound glitching. So I'd like you all to keep your fingers crossed, please, so that we can get through this damned chapter 11. But I joke, of course. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I'm as happy as everyone that the sound's back. So again, a full start. This is take 3, the second of the evening. It's good to be back. It seems like a long time since we've been together, so I'm happy to be back and happy that there's no technical difficulties. Fingers crossed. And just very quickly, we read about 8 or 9 pages of chapter 11 before the stream crashed last time. And Ouspensky was speaking about valuation, how one values the work, and also the 3 lines of work. Work for oneself, work for the group, and work for the work in general. And like I say, these are very powerful things, especially I suppose when you hear and read this section or these sections, it will make you think, how do you value the work? What's your relationship to the work? And so I think it's very good to consider these things. And if you're very new to the work, maybe you don't have any opinion, you don't have any value in it because you've just arrived and have just sort of made contact with it. But over time, with reading the text, finding benefit in your own life, you will no doubt find some value in it. That's my hope from sharing all of these readings, because of the value I've received, and hopefully I can pass that on to others. And so, as we always do, or let me say hello to those in the chat who have been very patient, and I do appreciate your patience, my friends. So thank you for that. And I'll just say hello to everyone. Yeah, Tahora's here from the future. Graham Fortune and Sophia giving a sound check. So thank you. I appreciate that. Like I say, fingers crossed. Santosh, hello, my friend. Toby Hull is happy too. So me too, Toby. And nice to see you. I hope that you are well also. Jean Harris says, hi all. Hi, Lewis. Sounds like you're having fun. How are you all? Yes, I'm doing very well, thanks. And the work is certainly being human, Toby Hall, and it never stops. So great to see everyone. Stephen Lance says, I am too old to be a servant, unfortunately, but still can nick a good idea or two, thanks. Well, we all have our own relationship to the work, to community, and everything else going on in life. So we're all individuals here. And this is what we will encounter in chapter 11, as long as we stay streaming. We will encounter the necessity for study of school principles and methods, the 3 lines of work, right and wrong in relation to the 3 lines, the need for understanding, aims and needs of the school, putting another in one's place. An organization is necessary for practical work. What is work? Valuation, as I was saying, working with people, working for the school, taking personal interest in the organization, the right kind of people, 4th way school, right attitude, payment, how to pay, center of gravity, discipline, rules, not doing what is unnecessary, surrendering one's decisions, meeting demands, shocks in schoolwork, idea of choice, physical work, school knowledge, men of higher mind, and can schools influence life, which I'm sure will be a very interesting section. And so that's all by way of introduction. Again, thanks for your patience. Thanks for being here. And this is chapter 11 of P.D. Ouspensky's The Fourth Way. In these lectures, we have spoken about man, not enough, but sufficiently for practical purposes. We have spoken a little about the universe, but I see that the idea of school and schoolwork is still very vague and sometimes mixed with formatory conceptions which do not lead anywhere. The idea of school must be taken simply, that is to say, a school is a place where you learn something. But there must always be a certain order in things, and you cannot learn without following this order. Speaking of schools connected with some kind of higher schools, without this connection a school has no meaning, I said that in such schools you must work on your being at the same time as your knowledge, because otherwise all your knowledge will be quite useless and you will derive no profit from it. Esoteric ideas that are not taken practically become mere philosophy, simply intellectual gymnastics that lead nowhere. I gave you all the words necessary for the study of the system and explained the position of this system in relation to other systems. You will remember that I spoke about different ways, and from what I said about them, it more or less followed that this system belongs to the fourth way, that is, has all the peculiarities and features of schools of the fourth way. Then I said that a school depends on the level of the people who study in this school, and level depends on level of being. For development of being, school is necessary. Many people working in the same direction according to school principles and methods. What one man cannot do, many people working together can do. When I met this system, I very soon became convinced that it was connected with schools and in this way had passed through recorded and unrecorded history. During this time, methods were invented and perfected. Schools can be of different degrees, but at present I take as a school every kind of preparatory school leading in a certain direction, and an organization that can be called a school of the fourth way is an organization which introduces three forces into its work. What is important to understand is that there is a kind of secret in schoolwork, not in the sense of something actually hidden, but something that has to be explained. The idea is this. If we take schoolwork as an ascending octave, we know that in each octave there are two intervals or gaps between mi and fa and between si and do. In order to pass through these gaps without changing the character or the line of the work, it is necessary to know how to fill them. So if I want to guarantee the direction of the work in a straight line, I must work on three lines simultaneously. If I work only on one line or on two lines, the direction will change. If I work on three lines or three octaves, one line will help another to pass the interval by giving the necessary shock. It is very important to understand this. Schoolwork uses many cosmic ideas, and three lines of work is a special arrangement to safeguard the right direction of the work and to make it successful. The first line, and so here's, as I was saying in the introduction, the three lines of work, and yes, everyone will have a different and individual relationship to each of these lines. So here we go. The first line is work on oneself, self-study, study of the system, and trying to change at least the most mechanical manifestations. This is the most important line. The second line is work with other people. One cannot work by oneself. A certain friction, inconvenience, and difficulty of working with other people creates the necessary shocks. The third line is work for the school, for the organization. This last line takes on different aspects for different people. The principle of three lines is that the three octaves must go on simultaneously and parallel to one another, but they do not all begin at the same time, and so, when one line reaches an interval, another line comes in to help it over, since the places of these intervals do not coincide. If a man is equally energetic on all three lines, it leads him out of many accidental happenings. Naturally, the first line begins first. In the first line of work, you take knowledge, ideas, help. This line concerns only yourself. It is entirely egocentric. On the second line, one must not only take, but also give, communicate knowledge and ideas, serve as an example, and many other things. It concerns people in the work, so on this line one works half for oneself and half for other people. On the third line one must think of the work in general, about the school or the organization as a whole. One must think about what is useful, what is necessary for the school, what the school needs. So the third line concerns the whole idea of school and all the present and future of the work. If man does not think about this and does not understand it, then the first two lines will not produce their full effect. This is how school work is arranged, and this is why 3 lines are necessary. One can get additional shocks and the full benefit of the work only if one works on 3 lines. If we connect the 3 lines of work with the idea of right and wrong, then all that helps the first line, that is, one's personal work, is right. But on the second line, you cannot have it all to yourself. You have to think of other people in the work. You have to learn not only to understand, but to explain. You must give to others, and you will soon see that you can understand certain things only by explaining to others. The circle becomes larger, right and wrong become bigger. The third line already relates to the outside world, and good and bad become what helps or hinders the existence and work of the whole school, so the circle grows still larger. This is the way to think about it. I particularly draw your attention to the study and understanding of the idea of 3 lines. It is one of the chief principles of school work. If you apply it, many things will open up for you. This system is full of such instruments. If we use them, they open many doors. The first principle of the work is that efforts give results proportionate to understanding. If you do not understand, there will be no results. If you do understand, the results will be according to how much you understand. So the first condition is understanding, and even before that, one must know what to understand and how to get the right understanding. Real work must be work on being, but work on being requires understanding of the aims, conditions, and methods of the work. The aim of the work is to establish a school. For this purpose, it is necessary to work according to school methods and school rules, and to work on 3 lines. Establishing a school means many things. There are 2 conditions in the work with which one must begin. The first, that one must not believe anything, one must verify everything. The second, and even more important condition, refers to doing. One must not do anything until one understands why one does it and for what purpose. These 2 conditions must be understood and remembered. It is true that one may realize one does not know anything and does not know what to do, then one can always ask for advice. But if one asks, one has to accept and follow it. And I think this is why this work appeals so much for me, because as Ouspensky says there, the first condition is that one must not believe anything, one must verify everything. And again, if you do the work seriously and take what Ouspensky says in this text and in Search of the Miraculous, then you will begin to verify, and you won't have to believe anything. You will, again, you'll have objective understanding. But let's continue. So far you have worked on the first line. You have studied what was given and explained to you, and you have tried to understand. Now, if you wish to continue, you must try to work on the second line and, if possible, on the third line. You must try to think how to find more work on the first line, how to pass to work on the second line, and how to approach work on the third line. Without this, your study will give no results. Now ask questions until you are satisfied that you understand about the 3 lines of work, what each line means, why they are necessary, what is necessary for each of them, and so on. The profit you may get is always proportionate to your understanding. The more consciously you work, the more you can get. That is why it is so important that all this should be explained and understood. Question: how does one need 3 lines of work? In the beginning, all depends on the mind. Mind must be educated, it must awake. Later, it will depend on emotion. For this, one needs a school. One must meet other people who know more than one does, and one must discuss things with them. Certainly, if you remain by yourself, you will forget the things you learn, because there are so many momentums in us that things just disappear from our mind. That is why a man cannot work alone, and only the combined work of many people together can produce the necessary results. There are many obstacles, many factors which keep us asleep and make it impossible for us to awake. Things we learn will just disappear if nothing helps them, and what can help them? Only other people around. First, one must work on acquiring knowledge, material, practice. Then, when one has got a certain amount, one begins to work with other people in such a way that one person is useful to another and helps another. On the second line, because of a certain special organization, one is in a position to work for other people, not only for oneself. And later one may understand in which way one may be useful to the school. It is all a question of understanding. On the third line, you work for the school only, not for yourself. If you work on those three lines, after some time, this organization will become a school for you. But for the people who work only on one line, it will not be a school. You remember I said that a school is an organization where you can not only acquire knowledge, but also change your being. A school of this nature is not always the same. It has magical qualities and may be one kind of school for one person and something quite different for another person. You must understand that all you can receive, all ideas, all possible knowledge, all help comes from school. But the school does not guarantee anything. Take an ordinary university where only knowledge and instruction are given. It can guarantee you a certain amount of knowledge, but even that only if you work. But when the idea of change of being enters, no guarantee is possible. So people may be in the same school, in the same organization, and may be on different levels. You spoke of the aims and needs of the school. Could you tell us what they are? First, we must prepare ourselves for understanding them. We have school ideas, so we must make use of them. That will help us to understand schools. If we do nothing ourselves and talk about schools, it will only create imagination and nothing more. We must draw profit from the ideas we have. If we draw no profit from them, schools will not exist for us. You must have your own aim, and it must coincide with the aim of the school. It must enter into it. And hello there, Bunny Man, welcome. And you're very welcome. It's nice to see you. And Jean, I'm glad you're well too. I am also. Does the difference between the first and the third lines mean that a school has aims apart from the advancement of its members, such, for instance, as perpetuating its own knowledge? Not only. There may be many things, because it is taken in a different line of time. In relation to yourself, you can take only the present. In relation to school, a longer time. It may help if I remind you how this work began. A very long time ago, I came to the conclusion that many things existed in man that could be awakened. But I saw that this did not lead anywhere, because one moment they were awakened and another moment they disappeared, since there was no control. So I realized that school was necessary, and I began to look for a school, again in connection with these powers which I called miraculous. Eventually I found a school and found many ideas. These are the ideas we are studying now. For this study, an organization is necessary. First, in order that people could learn these ideas, and secondly, in order that they should be prepared for a further stage. This is one of the reasons for an organization, and only those people can have a place in it who have done something for themselves already. As long as they are in the power of false personality, they cannot be useful, either to themselves or to the work. So the first aim of everyone who is interested in the work is to study himself and find what must be changed. Only when certain things are changed does one become ready for active work. One thing must be connected with another. One must understand that personal study is connected with the organization and with the study of general ideas. With the help of these ideas, we can find much more. The more you have, the more you can find. Work is never at an end. The end is far. It cannot be theoretical. Each of these ideas must become practical. There are many things in this system that an ordinary man cannot invent. Some things one can discover by oneself, some other things one can understand only if one is given them, but not otherwise. And there is a third kind of things which one cannot understand at all. It is necessary to understand these gradations. It seems to me that we have been learning, It seems to me that what we have been learning so far was theory, and now we need to make it a matter of personal practice. Quite right. Only it is wrong to think that until now everything was theoretical. From the first lecture you were given material for self-observation and for practical work. You must not think that this is the beginning of something new that has not existed before. What form of work could we have other than lectures and discussions? You must think what you need, beside discussions. You need instruction. You need to be shown the way. One cannot find the way by oneself. It is the state of human beings that they can be shown the way, but they cannot find it by themselves. You see, to put it more clearly, you enter the second line of work in this way. These groups have been going on for some time, and there were people and groups before you. One of the principles of school work is that one can get instruction and advice not only from me, but also from people who have been studying before you came, perhaps for many years. Hello, Mr. Algo, welcome. Their experience is very important for you because even if I wished it, I could not give you more time than is possible for me. Other people have to supplement what I can give you, and you on your side must learn how to use them, how to profit by their experience, how to get from them what they can give you. Experience shows that in order to get what it is possible to get from these ideas, a certain organization is necessary. Organization of groups of people not only for discussing things, but also for working together, as for instance in the garden, in the house or on the farm, or doing some other work that can be organized and started. When people work together at anything for the sake of experience, they begin to see in themselves and in other people different things which they do not notice when they just discuss. Discussion is one thing and work is another. So in all schools there exist different kinds of organized work. People can always find what will suit them without unnecessary sacrifices, because sacrifices are not expected. But you must think about it. You must realize that so far people have looked after you, talked to you, helped you. Now you have to learn to look after yourselves, and later you will have not only to look after yourselves, but also after new people. This also will be part of your work. The chief point I speak about is understanding. I mean understanding of the work, of the necessity of work, of the requirements of the work, the general plan of the work, and interest in it all. This is what is obligatory. One cannot understand the methods of the work until one understands its general direction. And when one understands the direction, it will help one to understand many other things that one wants to understand. You see, one cannot avoid one's share in this part of the work. If, for one or another reason, one avoids it, one cannot acquire any more. Some people do not understand the very beginning of work. They do not think about work as work. They take it in the ordinary way. There is one thing that is necessary, obligatory, after a certain time, and this is valuation, because one cannot work without it. On the one hand, people want to work, but on the other, they want to take things in the same usual way. But if they want to work, everything in reference to the work must be regarded differently, everything, and they think they can take things in the same way. What I find lacking is work and understanding of work and valuation of work. Valuation is lacking chiefly. Everything is taken for granted, and at the same time it is taken from an ordinary point of view. As a result, nothing changes. Much depends on personal attitude and personal work. And as I was saying, this is a very important concept, this idea of valuation. How do we value the work? Also, how do we value these book club live readings, right? And so I suppose you're all here, and so you value them, and I value you being here. But as Ouspensky says there, and he says a few times that, work cannot exist on the same level as life. It has to be on a different level. A school for one person is not a school for another. How can one have the right attitude and valuation? First of all, before beginning to study, one must decide what one really wants to know. It is quite possible that what we study here will not interest one. One may find that one does not need it at all. So one must try to find more or less what one wants, otherwise one may only waste one's time. This is first. Secondly, one must understand certain fundamental principles, otherwise one will fail to understand many other things. Something will always stand in the way of one's understanding. A very important principle is that a person cannot study the system alone, and it is necessary to understand why. There are many reasons. The first reason is very simple and obvious. One cannot have a teacher all to oneself. If one finds someone who can teach this system, he will not spend his time on one person, and without someone who can explain things and work with one can do nothing. Secondly, if one works alone or tries to, one cannot put someone else in one's place, and at a certain moment this becomes very necessary in order to pass to the next degree of knowledge and being. You will remember what I said about the staircase in the first lecture, in connection with the explanation of the growth of magnetic center and the work following. I said that a man can rise to the next step of the staircase only by putting another man in his place. This means that one climbs up this staircase, which represents the difference in levels between ordinary life and what is called the way. The way does not begin on the same level as ordinary life. One has to go up higher to reach it. This means that the level of our understanding, our ordinary mind, even our ordinary feelings have to be changed. Only in thinking about putting other people in one's place, it is very important to avoid one dangerous mistake. Some people are inclined to think that this must be their individual work. They fail to understand that this expression is a formulation of a general principle. It is childish to think that it can be done by one person transmitting these ideas to another. First of all, it is necessary to understand that people cannot do it, and secondly, that it cannot be demanded of them, because individual work can only refer to oneself. Putting people in one's place is school work, that is, the joint efforts of all the people belonging to the school. All school work is organized with this purpose in view. The different branches of the work all pursue the same end, to put new people in the place occupied by the people who are there at present, and in this way help them to rise to other steps. But nobody has thought about it in the right way. For instance, very few people think about these lectures and about the house in the country, who arrange them and how they are arranged and run. This is the answer to the question about putting someone in one's place, because other people look after you and arrange things for you. They studied the ideas of the system before you and came to a certain point in their study, and now they want to go further. For that they have to help other people to know what they know. They cannot do it by themselves, so they help to arrange lectures and other things for newer people. This is part of the general plan of school work. The principle of the work is that everyone must do what he can. Then, when other people come, it is for them to do what others have done for them. A certain period of effort is necessary, and everyone must share in it. And yeah, thanks for the comments, guys. But I think, yeah, I'll address them all at the end so that we can stay on topic. But yeah, keep them coming and keep interacting and doing the group work, and I'll keep reading. Although, yeah, I think so, Sophia. Yeah, that's nicely put. But also, Gurdjieff talks about the law of accident, doesn't he? And when technology is involved, so sometimes when things go wrong, just quickly on Sophia's point, I said I wasn't going to comment, but Sophia's comment has got me going. Sometimes it's the best way I like to reframe it is to be grateful for all the other streams we've done that haven't had a technical issue. Because obviously we had one the last time, chapter 11, earlier today, hopefully, inshallah, God willing, there's no more difficulties. But it's good to sort of say, well, we've had thousands of streams, hundreds maybe of streams that have all gone well, and there's been no difficulties. So that's good. And like you say, when it does go wrong, all you can do is sort of hold your hands up and say, well, what's the serenity prayer, right? Accept the things we cannot change. And so, yes, thankfully we're back together, and it all seems to be going well. Touch wood, and it's great to have you all here. Mr. Algo, I've got coffee, my friend. No beer. Beer and Ouspensky don't go well together because, you get a bit tipsy and it's very difficult to concentrate. So coffee to help me to stay awake and stay focused. So sometimes there's a cheeky beer or a gin and tonic, Mr. Algo, MGR Algo. But today, just the focus coffee. Back to the text. And anyway, we do have a group, just quickly before last comment. We have a Discord server. So if you'd like to be in a group of like-minded people, very nice, wonderful, lovely people, then reach out to me via email. You'll find that very easily on the channel. And you can join up and, again, work. Well, I don't know about work. Chat away from these live readings. Why can a man do more in a group than by himself? For many reasons. The first, as I explained, because he cannot have a teacher all to himself. The second, because in school certain sharp corners are smoothed out. People have to adapt to one another, and this is generally very useful. The third is that one is surrounded by mirrors. One can see oneself in every person. That's certainly right, Emil. Certainly the social inhibitions fall away. So yes, a very good point. And this is why we have to be in a group, as Spencer says, because we can learn from other people. Other people are mirrors for us. To what annoys us in other people is likely something in ourselves that we dislike. But is there a tie between me and the other people here? There must be a tie. The tie is produced by work. Everybody who works creates this tie. We must not expect other people to think about us. They will do so as much as possible, but we cannot take it for granted. Would you say more on that? Is there any obligation between oneself and the people in this room? No, Sophia, I'd say no, a chat isn't a group, certainly not. I think it has to be a physical, even a Zoom meeting isn't a group. I think it has to be physical, has to be in the physical world. Otherwise, it's not a group, I would say. That's my opinion. But I think it has to be physically in the same room, in physical reality. That's my opinion. Would you say more on that? Is there any obligation between oneself and the people in this room? That depends on you, on how you understand it, what you feel about it, what you think you can do about it. There are no imposed obligations. Obligations come from work. The more one does, the more obligations one has. If one does nothing, nothing is asked of one. Mr. Gurdjieff explained this in the beginning. He said it was dangerous to do something in the work if you do not want difficult things to be asked of you. You said that the second line is work with people. I find it easier to work alone. Everybody finds that. Certainly it would be much better if you could sit here alone and talk to me without any other people. And particularly these people, because these people are especially unpleasant. We all think that. I thought that when I began to study. It is one of the most mechanical things in the world. The whole work, the whole system is arranged in such a way that you cannot get anything from the first line if you do not work on the second and third lines. In the first line, you can get certain ideas, certain information, but after a while you come to a stop if you do not work on the other two lines. While trying to work on the first line, How can one get an idea of the third line? By working on the first line to begin with, and then getting a picture of the whole, all the ideas of the system and the principles of school work. If you work on what we call the first line, self-study and study of the system, every possibility in the work enters into it. So the more time and energy you give to the study of the system, the more you will understand what is included in it. In this way, little by little, understanding will come. In the first line, you must be very practical and think about what you can gain. If you feel that you are not free, that you are asleep, maybe you will want to be free, to awake, and so you will work to gain that. In the third line, you think about the work, about the whole organization. First of all, organization must be the subject of your study. Like the ray of creation, the idea of organization, the needs of organization, the forms of organization. Then you will see that the organization is your business, not someone else's business. Everybody must take part in it when they can. Nobody is asked to do what they cannot, but everybody must think about it and understand it. What is important in the third line is not so much actual doing as thinking about it. You cannot leave other people to think about it for you. There can be no school work on one line. Schoolwork means work on 3 lines. It must be taken from a personal point of view and understood that only with these 3 kinds of help can one move from the passive dead spot. Too many things keep you there. You always have the same feelings, the same dreams, the same thoughts. Is the third line responsible for the progress of the system? Everything is. One line cannot exist without another. 1 or 2 lines is not work, but first of all, understanding is necessary. You can study, time is given for that, but you cannot decide to do one thing and put off another thing. You say that first we must understand about the third line, but that surely is not yet work. It depends. In a sense, to understand is already work. If not enough people think about the work as a whole and understand it, it is impossible to continue. A certain number of people must understand and be able to do what is necessary. You have never realized how difficult it is for the work to exist even in the form it has now. Yet it is possible for it to exist and develop if more understanding and energy is put into it. Then, right with understanding, it will be right development. But you cannot expect someone else to go on putting understanding and energy into it for you. And yes, Emil, I really believe that, and that's why I don't, I just see these as here at Book Club, it's live readings. I don't call it a group. I don't call the Discord server a group. I'm very clear, that there's certain levels to everything. And as I've just said a moment ago, and you're picking up on, the bodies need to be in the physical world together, and you need to have that physical connection. Gurdjieff talked, didn't he, about vibrations and energy and manifestations and all of these things. And that can only come about through physical groups. But, as Ouspensky has said a number of times already in this chapter 11, understanding is important, and I feel that the books help with understanding. The reading of and listening to the books helps with understanding, and then we can take in this information through our ears and eyes if we're doing both reading and listening, and then we can take that in. I learned very early on through Gurdjieff and also hypnotherapy and other texts that the subconscious receives all the impressions. So you've heard a lot of words here. We're on the 9th, we're about to go to the 10th page, and then we've got 20 more pages. So it's a hell of a lot of information to take in. The conscious mind can't possibly hold on to all of the information. You don't memorize everything, but it goes into the subconscious. The emotional center likely takes in some, physical center in its own way, and then you'll go to sleep, and it will all crystallize and process, and you wake up tomorrow, maybe a certain bit will come back to you, and you'll want to go listen to that again or find it, and And so that's my 2 pennies worth. And maybe one day we will find a group in the physical. We can get an Airbnb and be together in the physical world, all of the clubbers together. It'll be wonderful, but I'm not sort of pushing that too much at the minute. I don't want to put pressure on people, but if it were to occur naturally, I'd be very happy and open to that, but I don't want to be harping on that. I think this is lovely just in itself. So oh, thanks for this. MGR says normally MGR is an abbreviation in French for Monseigneur or Monsieur. Monseigneur, Monsieur. But I'm not. One day I came across an American's live stream. He thought MGR stood for manager, but there is really no problem. Okay, Monsieur, I'm going to call you then. Monsieur Algo, if you don't mind. If you do, let me know and I'll change that. But Toby Hole says about the same physical space, remember quantum entanglement. I certainly do. And so, very interesting point there. And yes, there is so much more you get from physicality that you can't get through the digital realm. Although, as Graham said above, it's a good start. These live readings, the Discord chat, emails back and forth, it's all very helpful. But there's nothing like a cup of coffee or a beer or a meal with an individual or a group. There is no replacement for that. Back to this question. But the initiative does not lie with me. Certainly it lies with you. Only on the second line it does not lie with you. It has to be organized. You must come to the understanding of the third line yourself. Only then will it be the third line. It depends on your attitude and your possibilities, and these possibilities cannot be created artificially. If you feel that it is necessary to do something for the work of the school, and if you are able to do it, that will be the third line of work. First, you must understand what is needed, and only later can you think about what you yourself can do for the organization. It seems to me that what you want from us is that we should feel that we are the organization, or part of it, that it is not something separate from us. Quite right. And more than that, you must understand what a school of the fourth way means. It is in ordinary life, and therefore it particularly needs organization. Schools of monks and yogis are organized, but ordinary life does not give opportunities for studying the different sides that need to be studied. For this, there must be a special organization. You speak much of understanding recently. Yes, understanding is necessary, and a personal attitude. People do not make the existence of the school a personal concern, and it cannot be impersonal. In many cases, words stand in the way of understanding. People speak of first line, second line, third line, just repeating words, and cease to understand anything. They use these words too easily. It is necessary to have your own personal picture of these lines, first of yourself acquiring knowledge, new ideas, breaking down old prejudices, discarding old ideas which you have formulated in the past and which contradict one another, studying yourself, studying the system, attempting to remember yourself, and many other things. You must think about what you want to get, what you want to know, what you want to be, how to change old habits of thinking, old habits of feeling. All that is the first line. Then, when you are prepared enough and have made sufficient efforts for some time, you can put yourself in the conditions of organized work where you can study practically. On the second line, the chief difficulty in the beginning is working not on your own initiative, because it depends not on yourself, but on arrangements made in the work. Many things enter into that. You are told to do this or that, and you want to be free. You don't want to do it. You do not like it, or you do not like the people with whom you have to work. Even now, without knowing what you will have to do, you can visualize yourself in conditions of organized work, which you enter without knowing anything about it, or very little. These are the difficulties of the second line, and your effort in relation to it begins with accepting things, because you may not like it. You may think you can do whatever you have to do better in your own way. You may not like the conditions, and so on. If you think first about your personal difficulties in relation to the second line, you may understand it better. In any case, it is arranged according to a plan you do not know and aims you do not know. There are many more difficulties that come later, but this is how it begins. In the third line, your own initiative comes in once more. If you have the possibility to do something not for yourself but for the work. And even if you can do nothing, it is useful to realize that you can do nothing. But then you must understand that if everybody came to the conclusion that they can do nothing, there would be no work. This is what I mean by making a personal picture, not just using the words. First line, second line, third line. Words mean nothing, particularly in this case. When you have a personal picture, you will not need those words. You will speak in a different language, in a different way. Every line in the work, like everything else in the world, goes by octaves, increasing, decreasing, passing intervals, and so on. If you work on all three lines, when you come to an interval in your personal work, another line of work may be going well and will help you to pass the interval in your individual work. Or some individual work may be going well and so may help you to pass the interval in some other line. This is what I meant when I spoke about intervals in connection with different lines. The one thing to understand in the work is that one cannot be free. Certainly, freedom is an illusion, for we are not free anyway. We depend on people, on things, on everything. But we are accustomed to think that we are free and like to think of ourselves as free. It reads tree, but I believe it's meant to be free. Because if it didn't, we are tree and like to think of ourselves as tree. So I think yes, Stephen, it's just a chat room, I would call it, a chat room. The Discord, you can sign up and send me an email and I will share the link with you for you to join up. Like I say, there's not very much going on, so I'm not saying that you're missing out on terribly much if you're not in Discord, but if you want to talk away from the chat with the like-minded clubbers here, you'll see many familiar faces. Then Stephen, get in touch. And yeah, that's some truth there as well, Sophia. Discord is disharmony. We're not tree, I think, he says. Not free, but I'll read this paragraph again. And then hopefully he goes on to explain himself, Sophia. But Stephen. Yes, Stephen, you need Wellington boots and a Macintosh and a pipe. Otherwise, I can't let you in. The one thing to understand in the work is that one cannot be free. Certainly, freedom is an illusion, for we are not free anyway. We depend on people, on things, on everything. But we are accustomed to think that we are free and like to think of ourselves as free. Yet at a certain moment, we must give up this imaginary freedom. If we keep this freedom, we can have no chance of learning anything. About thinking personally, I find when I try to do so, I bring it down to a small scale. You mix things. The word personal has misled you. Personal does not only mean your own life and conditions, you must feel it is your own work. A school can exist only when people feel not outside it but inside, when they think of it as their own house. Then only will they benefit from it and will know what can help the work, what may be useful. I will give you an example of personal attitude. You remember the small parable in the New Testament about a man finding a pearl and selling everything to go and buy it? There are also other small parables there which are all pictures of a personal attitude. Imagine a man taking it impersonally. It would be quite different. The New Testament always shows the necessity of a personal attitude, of personal profit. Many things become possible if we think about them in the right way. Every problem connected with the work, if understood rightly, gives you something. There is nothing from which you cannot get more profit than you do now. The first thing to learn in this system is how to get things. Everything you do must be done for a purpose, for your own purpose. You benefit from all the three lines, but from each in a different way. In relation to the third line, it is very important to understand the general idea of why this work exists and how to help it. As I said, the idea is to establish a school, that is, to work according to school rules and principles, first studying these rules and principles and then applying them in practice. Many conditions are necessary for that. One of these conditions is that people are necessary. There are people who are prepared, who are capable of developing these ideas, but they do not know them. So it is necessary to find them, find the right kind of people, and give them these ideas. But for that, one must first understand these ideas oneself. Sometimes I am asked why expansion should be necessary for a system that is meant only for a few. It is not difficult to answer this question. It is quite true that this system cannot belong to all, it cannot even belong to many, but we must make every effort to give it to as many people as possible. Expansion of the ideas of the system will be limited by the nature of the ideas themselves and by people's inertia and their incapacity to understand these ideas. But it must not be limited by our own inertia. And I really resonate with that bit. And so, of course, I'm going to read it again and repeat it because that's, again, why we're doing many of these readings here at the channel, and I'll read it again. It is quite true that this system cannot belong to all, it cannot even belong to many, but we must make every effort to give it to as many people as possible. And that's what I'm doing here. Like I say, people have said in the past that they came for Roald Dahl and stayed for Plato or Gurdjieff, or came for Enid Blyton and then had a little look and, what's this Ouspensky guy, and went in and, so by putting these readings online for free on YouTube, it makes it very easy for someone to just click and listen, but then the work begins. So let's continue. The system can reach the right people, that is, people who can not only take, but also give, only if it is given to a large number of people. A certain number of people. If it is limited to a small group, it will never reach the right. The system can reach the right people, that is, people who can not only take, but also give, only if it is given to a large number of people. If it is limited to a small group, it will never reach the right people. Small groups, if they think that they can keep the ideas to themselves, will distort and spoil them. Distortions can be avoided only if work grows and if many people know about it. Small groups, limited and unchanging, will always add something personal to it. So the more the work grows, the more each individual can get from it. Another reason why schools cannot exist on too small a scale is that only a certain number of people gives a sufficient variety of types. For successful group work, variety of types is necessary. Otherwise, there is no friction, no opposition. People would think they understood one another. And that's very kind of you, Sophia. I do really appreciate that. And like I say, it's my own love for these ideas, for Mr. Gurdjieff and Mr. Ouspensky, that I'm doing it. And again, if I can introduce even one or two people to it, then, well, hallelujah. And I'll just carry on reading these wonderful texts. And we've got more coming up, more biographical, lighter material than old Ouspensky. But I think we have to, we should go to from a Fritz Peters to an Ouspensky to a Margaret Anderson to the Hartmans, to Maurice Nicole and create a as clear a picture of the work, the ideas, and the individuals in the work as we possibly can. Oh, he certainly is, Sophia. Don't tell anyone, but he's my favorite. What is the best way to start forming a fourth way school? Here we go. We've got some instruction. What does he say? We need to set up a Discord server to begin with and then bring it into physical reality eventually. Forgive me. Forgive me. What is the best way to start forming a fourth way school? We cannot start. A school starts from another school. If people meet together and say, let us start a school, it will not be a fourth way school. But if a school is started, how to continue, how to develop, that is what you must think about. And for this, you must understand what work on 3 lines means and then work on 3 lines. To some people, the system appears selfish. The system must be selfish in a sense. The first line of work is selfish, for there you hope to gain something for yourself. The second line is mixed. You have to take other people into consideration, so it is less selfish. And the third line is not selfish at all, for it is something you do for the school, not with the idea of gaining something from the school. The idea of gain belongs to the first line, so the system includes in itself both what is selfish and not selfish. How can one understand the third line practically? When you begin to understand, this marks a definite moment in the work. Suppose you are in contact with a certain school, which level, or whether good or bad, we do not enter into it. In this school, you get certain knowledge, but what do you give in exchange? In what way do you help the school? This is the third line. I am often asked what the third line means, how to understand it, and how to start working on the third line. This question never presented any difficulty for me personally. From the moment I met this system, I felt it was bigger and more important than anything I ever knew, and at the same time that it was known only to a small group of people. There were no organizations behind it, no helping, nothing. Science, art, the theatre, literature had their universities, museums, books, a large following of people, the help of governments, the help of society, and at the same time all their combined content was very small compared with the system. At best they were only preparation for the system, and in spite of this they had all and the system had nothing. These were my ideas when I met this system. I decided to work on this line, and this was the third line of work. It is quite clear that the work needs an organization and a place for all the people who want to come, and therefore it is necessary to find people who understand this need and are willing and able to support the work in every way they can. Take as an example an ordinary school. It requires a certain plan and organization, and a certain number of people to run it, and one must know who will do one thing and who will do another. So everyone who wants to go on must realize that this work, its existence and its welfare is his own business, that he must think about it, must try to understand its requirements, must regard it as his personal concern that the work should go on, and not leave all this to other people. The most important thing is to make it one's own concern, to think of it as one's own work. There is a Russian proverb, if you like coasting downhill, you must like pulling the toboggan uphill. If someone says, I'm interested in the first line but not in the third, it is the same as saying, I like coasting down but do not like pulling the toboggan up. Try to think that I may go away and the work as it is now may disappear. Look at it from this point of view. Do not take it as a permanent institution. I try to take what I can from the work, but how to learn to give back? Sometimes one can be in the position to put the question in this form, but sometimes it is sufficient to understand what may be given, not what you can give, to know what is useful and necessary for the work without relation to yourself. Only then can you understand what may be useful at a given moment and see whether you can do something at that moment or not. So before you can put I into it, you must understand what can be done in general, what the work needs. Only later you can put I into it. I do not consider so much what one or another person actually does, but I consider very much what he thinks. This is what is important. If he thinks and feels rightly, opportunity may come. He may not have the opportunity to do anything today, but circumstances may change and opportunity may represent itself. But if he does not care about this side of things, if he does not understand it and does not think rightly about it, he deprives himself of the possibility to gain what he wants to gain. If circumstances stop this work as it is now, is there a possibility of developing oneself by using what one has heard here? I cannot answer this. I can only say that if people do not work in these conditions, how can they work without these conditions? Experience shows that with all possible help, a long time is necessary to get some results. So if one is by oneself, there is still less chance. It is impossible to say what will happen in one or another case. One has a tendency to forget the most elementary things one has learnt. Even what one thinks one has understood one forgets in a couple of weeks. Then, with the best intentions, people distort ideas. Supposing they do not come to any groups, they must continue to think. They have problems, ask themselves questions, and have to find answers to them. For instance, one of the usual forms of distortion by people who work on themselves or in separate groups is that they invariably take some kind of explanation as a principle. But if a man has learnt to remember himself, that is another thing. It is a different state, different conditions. In the work, the first condition is understanding what one wants to gain and how much one is prepared to pay for it, because one has to pay for everything. Sometimes one wants things without realizing what it involves and how much there is to pay. Try to think about it. Perhaps you will see what I mean. This means that everything one may acquire needs a certain effort, and in order to make this effort, particularly to make it consciously, one must know why one is doing it and what one can get by this effort. And it is very important to understand too in which conditions one can work and without which conditions it is useless to try to work. You say one must know how much one is prepared to pay. How can one pay? Payment is a principle. Payment is necessary not to the school, but to the people themselves, for without paying, they will not get anything. The idea of payment is very important, and it must be understood that payment is absolutely necessary. One can pay in one way or another way, and everyone has to find that out for himself. But nobody can get anything that he does not pay for. Things cannot be given, they can only be bought. It is magical, not simple. If one has knowledge, one cannot give it to another person, for only if he pays for it can the other person have it. This is a cosmic law. The idea of payment is very strongly emphasized in the New Testament, in Matthew 13, in several beautiful parables that I have mentioned. Man has to be a good merchant. He must know what to buy and how much to pay. Things cannot fall from heaven. They cannot be found. They must be bought. What one can get is proportionate to what one is prepared to pay, and one has to pay in advance. There is no credit. There is no check on the price. You cannot find out whether it is too high. Some people think it is too high, refuse to pay, and get nothing. I do not understand about paying in advance. How is it done? The only way is to pay in advance, but how to do it is another thing. All that we study here is how to pay in advance. As a general principle, paying in advance means that if you are doing certain work and want to have something connected with it, then if you make it useful for the school, you earn the right to have it. Payment is a most important principle in the work, and it must be understood. Without payment, you cannot get anything. But as a rule, we want to get something for nothing, and that is why we have nothing. If we really decided to go for this kind of knowledge, or even for quite a small thing, and we went for it regardless of everything else, we would get it. This is a very important point. We say that we want knowledge, but we don't really. We will pay for anything else, but for this we are not prepared to pay anything, and so as a result, we get nothing. Has payment to do with some loss to oneself? Loss or effort? You may gain in that way, but you may regard it as a loss. Payment has many sides. The first payment is, of course, taking the trouble to study and understand the things you hear. It is not yet payment in itself, but it creates the possibility of payment. Payment in the true sense of the word must be useful not only to you, but to someone else, to the school. But if you are not useful to yourself, you cannot be useful to the school either. So in order to progress, one must make small payments, or big. What are they? This is what we are speaking about. You must find it for yourself. It always means a certain effort, certain doing different from what you would do naturally. It must be necessary or useful to the work. I do not understand the difference between efforts and payment. Efforts may be payment, but they may be useful and not only to you. It is necessary to understand the work in general and the needs of the work. When one understands all that, one will find ways of doing something useful. Attitude depends on yourself and on your understanding. Opportunity depends on circumstances. Is there a connection between work on oneself and payment? If you do not work on yourself, you will not be able to pay. This is the connection. Who will pay? False personality cannot pay. So in the beginning, payment means effort, study, time, many things. But that is only the beginning. As I said, the idea is that in the way of attaining something in the work, one gets only as much as one pays for. It is a physical law, the law of equilibrium. And sorry, just a quick comment. I'm reminded reading this bit about payment from, I don't know if it's J.G. Bennett's autobiography or his book, Gurdjieff Making a New World, but there's a section where Bennett is saying to Gurdjieff, you know, I can't pay you. I haven't got the means. I can't pay. And Gurdjieff says to him, no, don't worry about that. You know, you are paying. You're paying, you know, you're serious, you understand, you're doing the work. Whereas other people, they would pay heavily sort of physical cash, but they weren't doing any, you know, esoteric payment, if you like. They weren't doing any efforts, any work, any internal work on themselves, but they were giving Gurdjieff a lot of money. This is what we learn. Again, I can't recall the book, but anyway, Gurdjieff was going to shut down the American arm that Alfred Araj was running, but he kept receiving payments coming from America, these American dollars, he would say, in Beelzebub's tales. And so he's getting loads of money from America. And so he's like, I'm not going to shut it down. I'll let it continue because they're sending over these wonderful American dollars. And so there's many ways to pay, isn't there? But I imagine Gurdjieff wanted people who were willing to make efforts to understand the work and to help others to, you know, onto the next step of the ladder, as he says. Is payment sacrifice? Yes, but you have to sacrifice only non-existent things, imaginary things. All our values are imaginary. In the work, one acquires new values and loses imaginary values. Has one to break down every thought one has? You cannot generalize. Some of them may be useful. If all these things could be explained briefly, it would be easy. It is necessary to study many things in order to know what to pay and how to pay. And in life you get credit, but here you get no credit. By paying, you must get something, but you do not know what you will get. Must one be willing to pay? Yes, but it may be difficult, not easy. Generally, paying must be difficult for you and useful for the work, but this is too general an explanation. Often we cannot define things until we come to facts. We cannot have old things and new things. There is no room for them. So we first must make room for them. This is so even in regard to ordinary things. If one wants much, one must give much. If one wants little, one will give little. Measure it, then you will understand. I think perhaps one deludes oneself about wanting to change. Very often. This is a very good observation because often one persuades oneself that one wants to change, but at the same time one wants to keep everything small, keep every small thing. So where is the change? Change is impossible if one wants to keep everything. To think about changing, one must also think about what one would give up. Again, very powerful concept and idea there. Is there something in ourselves that prevents us from wanting enough to change? If we desired enough, should we get the help? Yes, certainly, but I would not put it like that. You have all the help possible. It is now your turn to work, your turn to do something. Certainly, with different conditions, different preparation, and also different circumstances, things could be better arranged. But the question is not how much is given, but how much is taken, because generally only a little part is taken of what is given. Does it mean that it is important for us to plan our own affairs so that we have more time to devote to the work? I think almost everybody, with the exception of very extreme cases, can give sufficient time to take a certain part in the work without actually changing his life and affairs. It is not possible for most of us to give up our lives. No, I said that people must think about this side of the work, and they must look at the practical side, what is possible and what is impossible. I am perfectly sure that in most cases people can continue to do what they have to do and live as they are accustomed to live. There is nothing in life that cannot become work if one tries to remember oneself, tries not to identify, to understand that everything happens, and so on. It is not necessary to change circumstances. On the contrary, changing circumstances is even worse, especially in the beginning. Later it may be useful, but not at first. What did you mean by saying that everything in life can be a possibility to work? I meant that every ordinary occupation in life can become work. If one tries to apply the ideas of the work, then little by little, whatever one does becomes work. What is a practical application of this system? For instance, the possibility, by self-remembering, of increasing our consciousness. This immediately becomes practical, and there are many other things. I'm beginning to understand that most of the work one tries to do for other people in life is useless. Would it be true to say that the school teaches one to discriminate as to what work one is really capable of? Yes, certainly. This is one of the most important things. But the school does not teach you just to work for people. It teaches you to work for the school. And in this way you learn what you can do and how to do it. You must learn first to work for yourself. Without that, you cannot do anything. You must learn to be useful to yourself, to change yourself. Secondly, you must learn to be useful to people in the school. You must help them, and then you must learn to help the school as a whole. As I said, only when one works on all the three lines can one get full benefit from the school, and in that way one learns what one can do outside the school. Besides, in school one learns cosmic laws and one begins to understand why certain things are impossible. If we are all mechanical, I cannot make out why we are trying to do anything. If we have a school, what is the object of having it? If there were no possibility to change, there would be no object of having it. That there is a possibility, and this makes all the difference. In this system, we know that it is impossible to do, that everything happens, but we also know that there are possibilities to develop this power to do. Does work on oneself gather momentum after a time or remain equally different, like pushing a cart uphill? I think it becomes more difficult because it comes to more and more ramifications. You start on one line, then after some time you work on 3 lines, and each of them divides, and all the time requires attention and effort. There is no momentum there. On the other hand, one acquires more energy, becomes more conscious, and that makes it easier in a sense, but by itself, work cannot become easier. Is it necessary to work for the school before you can make any progress? It cannot be put like that. If you work for yourself and make progress, then the opportunity of working for the school may come. But you cannot make theoretical suppositions. It is your initiative that it is the most important thing, both in the first and the third line. You are given material, but the initiative remains with you. But in the second line, you have no initiative or very little. Let me repeat what I said earlier. You have received these ideas and came here because certain people have worked before you and have put their energy and time into it. Now you must learn to share the responsibility. You cannot continue getting the ideas without sharing the responsibility. This is quite natural, so if not today, then tomorrow one must do. Do what? One must understand what to demand from oneself. We study school methods, and this is the only way to study them. Can you give an example of how to share responsibility? No. As I said, it is a question of understanding what is useful, what is necessary. Then it is a question of seeing what one can do, if not now, perhaps later. It cannot be given in the form of a prescription. Is it not true that for one's own benefit one should make payment which is difficult? Yes, but you must find it. Payment is not just making things difficult for yourself without any benefit for anyone else. Should we avoid looking at the work only from the point of view of our special capacities? Naturally, everybody must look first from the point of view of what he can do. But supposing his capacities are not useful, he must then find new capacities which may be useful. People often ask, how to learn to do? By working, by doing all that is possible in connection with the 3 lines of work. Often we cannot do because we do not know our own powers. Then we have not the habit of a certain discipline that is necessary in the work. Everything can be learned, but it requires initiative and understanding means effort, work. It seems to me that I have more from the work than I have given, but I have nothing to give. I would not make such a complication out of it. We always have something to give, and we always have something to learn. So long as you are interested and continue to take things, you have a chance to pay. You lose the chance to pay when you take nothing. I feel that it is part of our concern with the 3rd line of work that we have to try to become man number 4. That is not the 3rd line of work. You do it for yourself, otherwise you cannot do it. All 3 lines are connected, but the 3rd line is what you do directly for the school, such as you are, without wanting to become man number 4. But it seems to me that until we reach a higher level of being, the understanding of which you spoke would not be for us. No, you are wrong. If you mean by a different level of being having a center of gravity, then you are right. But if you mean a different state of consciousness, you are wrong. Because if you wait till you have a different state of consciousness, you will get nothing. So the answer to your question depends on what you mean by change of being. Struggle with false personality is also necessary. Because of false personality, we can find nothing. This means that a certain change is necessary, but not a big change. Would you mind repeating again the characteristics of a center of gravity? Permanent center of gravity comes at a certain moment in relation to the work. When one is already sure what one is doing and sure of the system, and when this becomes more important than anything else, when it occupies the chief place in one's life. This is the moment when permanent center of gravity is established. But when one is interested in the ideas of the system, and yet at any moment something else may become more important, this means that one has no center of gravity. Is it possible to look on 3 lines of work as being 3 different forces forming a triad? Yes, in a sense, but they always change. One is active today, but was passive yesterday, and may be neutralizing tomorrow, and they are different even in obligations. You see, like many other things, these 3 lines of work cannot be denied in words, cannot be penned, cannot be, I don't know what that word's meant to be. I'll just say denned. You see, like many other things, these 3 lines of work cannot be denned in words, or penned in words. At the same time, the idea is very clear. The moment you understand it, you will ask yourself, why did I want definitions? It is quite clear without words. You must try to remember all that was said about it, for many things were already said on this subject. For instance, remember what was said about prism. I remember a conversation with Mr. Gurdjieff many years ago. He put it in a very simple form. He said, one can be useful to oneself, one can be useful to other people, one can be useful to me. He represented the school. That describes the 3 lines of work, and he added, if one is only useful to oneself and cannot be useful to me or to other people, it will not last long. But by being useful to oneself, one automatically becomes useful to other people? No, it is separate. Only forgetting goes automatically. Nothing good happens automatically. It is quite right to get things for yourself, but if you think only about that, you limit yourself. One has to study oneself. One has to work on oneself, so one has time to study other lines. But after some time, if one does not accept this idea and keeps only to one line, one begins to lose ground. Isn't the 3rd line rather out of our reach at the moment? No, it is only necessary to understand. Again, one person may be in one position, another in another position, so there are no general laws about it. For instance, I began with the 3rd line. I could do more on the 3rd line before I could do anything on the 1st and the 2nd line. So that's very interesting, isn't it? What Ouspensky is saying there. He said that from the very beginning, for instance, I began with the 3rd line. I could do more on the 3rd line before I could do anything on the 1st and the 2nd. So that's Ouspensky telling his students, his pupils, that he began with the 3rd line. He worked for the work generally first and only later. So again, maybe we can take that data point in and understand maybe Ouspensky's relationship with Gurdjieff, with the man and his own internal work. But of course, it's all speculation. Isn't there a sort of organization to help people to work on the 3rd line? Yes, there is. But an organization cannot help by itself because each line must be based on some kind of attitude. An organization cannot replace an attitude, but at the same time, an organization is necessary for understanding certain things. For instance, one of the most important things in the work is the understanding of discipline. If one understands this idea of discipline, one finds the possibility to work against self-will. If one does not understand it, one will think one works, but in reality one will not work, because it will only be self-will. Study of discipline is connected with the 2nd line of work. Without understanding school discipline, one cannot have inner discipline. There are people who could do good work and who fail because they lack discipline. Yet change of being is possible only with school work and with school discipline. For a certain period of time, one must have it, and then later one can work by oneself. Discipline is connected with rules. Rules are the conditions on which people are accepted and given knowledge in a school. Keeping these rules or conditions is their first payment and the first test. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Sophia says, because in the beginning he brought so many people to Gurdjieff. So yeah, that's a very good point. But also, latterly in his, posthumously after he died, He left us in search of the miraculous. And again, I speak for myself, but also Bennett, Fritz Peters, Joseph Aziz, and even Kurdian. Sophia, I received the book. I started reading it. Very interesting. All of them say, Fragments of an Unknown Teaching in Search of the Miraculous is the book. That documents the early teachings in Russia. And so, like you say, Ouspensky did so much for the Gurdjieff work. And that's why Maurice Nicole, his 5-volume commentaries is the psychological commentaries on Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, the ideas of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky. He puts them together because, Maurice Nicole met Ouspensky first, spent a few years with Gurdjieff, then went back with Ouspensky. Well, Stephen, I think the energy coming off of In Search of the Miraculous is doing you some good, my friend. So just don't move it. Keep it there. Back to the text here. One of the most important things in every kind of school is the idea of rules. If there are no rules, there is no school. Not even an imitation school can exist without rules. If it is an imitation school, there will be imitation rules, but there must be some kind of rules. One definition of a school is that it is a certain number of people who accept and follow certain rules. Rules are not for convenience, they are not for comfort, they are for inconvenience and discomfort, and in that way they help self-remembering. You must understand that all the rules are for self-remembering, although they also have a purpose in themselves. If there are no rules and the importance of rules is not understood, there is no work. The important thing to realize about rules is that there is really only one rule, or it is better to say one principle, that one must not do anything unnecessary. Now try to understand that. Why cannot we do in the right sense? Because we do so many unnecessary things. Every moment of our life we do hundreds of unnecessary things, and because of that we cannot do and must first learn not to do anything unnecessary. First, we must learn not to do unnecessary things in relation to the work, and later in connection with our own lives. It may take a long time, but this is the way to learn. You must do this, you must not do that. This is all specifications, but there is only one rule. Until you understand this fundamental rule, you have to try to follow other rules which are given. Rules are particularly important in connection with organization of groups because since people come without knowing one another and without knowing what it is all about, certain rules have to be imposed. For instance, one of the rules that applies to new people is that they should not talk to people outside about what they hear at lectures. People begin to realize the importance of this rule only when this form of talk turns against them, when their friends insist on their talking and they no longer want to talk. This rule is to help people not to lie, because when they speak about things they do not know, they naturally begin to lie. So if, after listening to 1 or 2 lectures, people begin to talk about what they have heard and express their opinions, they begin to lie. Most people are too impatient. They do not give themselves enough time. They come to conclusions too soon, and so cannot help lying. But the chief reason for this rule is that it is a principle of school work, not to give ideas, but to keep them from people, and to give them only on a certain conditions which safeguard them from being distorted. Otherwise, they will be distorted the next day. We have had enough experience of that. It is very important to prevent these ideas from deteriorating, because it may be said that a school is something where people and ideas do not die. In life, both people and ideas die, not at once, but die slowly. Another reason for this rule is that it is a test, an exercise of will, an exercise of memory and understanding. You come here on certain conditions. The first condition is that you must not talk, and you must remember it. This helps enormously to self-remember because it goes against all ordinary habits. Your ordinary habit is to talk without discrimination, but in relation to these ideas, you must discriminate. It seems that in a school, nothing is done without reason. Is one reason why this rule is necessary that talking would introduce a new factor, the result of which could not be predicted? Certainly. If people knew what to do without rules, rules would not be necessary. At the same time, it is also a kind of education, because by obeying rules, people create something in themselves. There would not be enough friction if there were no rules. I take it that the main object of rules is to break mechanicalness. Each rule has many objects, but you cannot expect anything from rules alone. They are only a part of the general work, a help. I find it almost impossible not to utilize the knowledge so far gained to assist one's friends. It cannot be utilized yet because if you try to do something with the amount of knowledge you have, you will distort it. It is necessary to have more because only then will you be able to judge whether you can do something with it in a given case or not, whether you can give something to this or that person or not. Now you cannot say. Besides, everything in this system must be explained fully or not touched at all, and in order to explain one thing, you have to explain another. This is the difficulty. Do you see what I mean? For us, many things are facts, or at least should be facts. If you tell them to people who have not gone slowly through this study, for them it will be something like faith. They will either believe or not believe. And since these things mostly go against ordinary ideas, it would be much easier for them to disbelieve. So why should we produce more disbelievers? It is impossible to convey these ideas sufficiently clearly to people who do not study them. And again, that's an excellent observation there from Ouspensky, isn't it? It's like, I want to know what Gurdjieff and Ouspensky are talking about. Well, go away and read In Search of the Miraculous first. Start with that, and then we can have a chat. And it's like, 18 chapters, you know? What are they talking about? What's this language they're using? Just maybe read it again, second and third time, and then you'll understand a bit more, and then we can talk again. It's no wonder people don't come to these ideas. It's almost like a lot of things have to fall into place, right? For people to get the bug, maybe, or to have the interest sparked within them. But I'm sure many people in the chat have had that spark, and I suppose would wish it on people, right? Because you know how powerful these ideas are. I'm sure many of you in the chat value them very highly. And so, you'd love to share them with people, or to at least share the enthusiasm you have with another person. And Stephen says, my fiance thought In Search of the Miraculous was witchcraft. I bet she didn't read it though, Stephen. Hey, that's what I'm saying. You got to read it and read it through, beginning to end. Let's continue. We're getting near the end now, but not quite yet. Chapter 11, the gift that keeps on giving, eh? Hopefully the stream's been okay so far today, so hallelujah, and long may it continue. It is difficult to discuss something with anyone without it being coloured by what we have heard here. Until it becomes easy, you cannot begin to do anything. Everything will be transformed into talk and will remain talk. Only when you are able to keep silent, keep something to yourself, only then can you accumulate more knowledge or material. If you make a hole in a balloon, the contents of the balloon will escape. If you make a hole in yourself, something will also escape. Rules are difficult to keep, because by remembering rules and obeying rules, you accumulate conscious energy. This is chiefly why rules are made. One cannot describe rules or give a catalogue of them, but rules can be understood. Besides, emotional development needs discipline. Nothing develops the emotional centre so much as giving up self-will. Rules are connected with the idea of conduct. When we become men number 5, our conduct will be perfect compared to what it is now. But we are not men number 5, so we must have rules. If we remember rules, understand and follow them, our conduct will be consistent and will lead in a definite direction. It will no longer be the erratic conduct of men 1, 2, and 3. Hello there, Flibbity Gibbets. Welcome, my friend, who says, I imagine you're talking about In Search of the Miraculous, Flibbity. It seems very theoretical, and I don't know if anyone has used it successfully. Are you speaking about In Search of the Miraculous? And yes, again, you'll need to keep reading. Mr. Thompson, I think, behind Flibbity Gibbets. All the ways need discipline. This explains why one cannot work by oneself. One cannot create discipline by oneself. If one understands this work, then discipline takes the form that one does not decide for oneself, but works according to instructions. It takes a long time to acquire will, for self-will has to be conquered first. In the meantime, another will is necessary, the will of the school, of the organization. And Flibbity Gibbets, if you have any questions or want any particular passages, what does he say about this, or where do I find out about that? As always, and anyone else in the chat, you can reach out via email. I like nothing more than sharing the related passages and sections that people are interested in. And so reach out if you want help with understanding. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay, Flibbity Gibbets, and that's a good observation, of course. So, very good observation, and that's why it would be necessary, like I said, to read it 3 times and have a very informed impression and opinion, and to practice some of the practical aspects of it. So, yeah, the work continues. Hello there, Kevin. You're very welcome, my friend, and I'm glad it helped you with your schoolwork, and good luck in whatever essay or test that you have to do, and I'm happy to help. I do not understand why rules belong to the second line and not the third. Try to think. There can be no rules on the first and the third lines. There you must do what you can. There must be initiative. Work must be free. On the second line, there must be discipline. What is more important on the second line, advantage to oneself or advantage to other people? It is impossible to put it this way. In the second line, you must be able to forget your own interests, your own likes and dislikes. Are the questions which people ask at lectures and which are helpful to other people the second line of work? No, work is another thing, No, work is another thing, It is necessary to understand what the word work means in the system sense. It does not mean happenings like that somebody's question happens to give a useful result. Work always means a line of efforts leading towards a certain definite aim. Not one effort. One effort does not mean work, but a connected line of efforts, an uninterrupted line of efforts. Only that becomes work, and this is very important as well. And to Flibbity Gibbet's point, in the beginning, just working through, as I'm saying, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but also very seriously also, working through In Search of the Miraculous from chapter 1 to chapter 18, systematically, listen to them all, chapter a day, chapter every other day, chapter a week. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not about speed. It's not about racing through it. But that you can consider that your first effort, working through the text. Let's not mention Beelzebub's tales just yet, but you work through the text of In Search of the Miraculous, and that is, dare I say, Herculean. It's a Herculean effort the first time. but it's an effort nonetheless. And I'm going to reread that final sentence. Not one effort. One effort does not mean work, but a connected line of efforts, an uninterrupted line of efforts. Only that becomes work. If two people help each other, will that be second line? No, as I have explained. In the second line there is no initiative, but there must be a certain preparation for it. One must understand the necessity of working with people. When you begin to understand that it is physically impossible to work alone, that it is only because of these other people that you yourself can work, that will be understanding. But it will not be second line yet. You must understand that the people you meet here are necessary for you as the system itself. This will be a beginning. Is there any particular line that will help one to escape from doing unnecessary things? No particular line, all lines that are explained. You must be able to see what is possible. You are given many suggestions, and one day you can do better work on one line and another day on another line. There is no special line for all days, for all time, and there is self-remembering. Everything that was said about identification, considering negative emotions, study of the system, many things. You never know which will be more useful at a given time. One moment one helps, and another moment another helps. Does this system involve self-surrender? Not in the usual sense. In the fourth way, only a special kind of surrender is necessary in certain kinds of work in some special situations. For instance, as I have said, one must surrender one's decisions in questions connected with the work in the school. This is an example of possible discipline, and one must remember why one is doing it and what one is doing. For instance, in remembering rules, one must surrender a considerable part of one's own judgment and simply remember them. Why? Because one must realize that one does not understand enough. When one does understand, there will be no need to remember rules. So you see, surrender does not mean blind sacrifice, and it is necessary only in connection with school work, not outside school work. I repeat, the way to acquire will is to put oneself under a certain discipline and not try to escape. People use in the work the same methods they use in life. They adapt. They try to make work as comfortable or at least as little uncomfortable as possible, and in that way they lose what the work can give. I do not see why adapting should not be admitted in the work. You cannot adapt to the work. You have to work in actual fact. Adapting may be right in certain cases in life, but in the work it is always wrong. Adaptation is not a sure method. You adapt yourself to one state or one set of circumstances, and then it changes and your adaptation fails. You must find a better method because you never know what will happen next moment. For instance, you sit in your room and decide not to be irritated, then something happens unexpectedly and you are irritated before you know it. How can we make this work more real? I realize that it is not what it might be. It is what it is because you are not what you might be. There is a certain principle in the work. Time is counted. For every person, certain demands are made. If you have only been 1 month in the work, the demands are small. Next month they grow. After 6 months they are bigger. After a year, still bigger. If a person does not meet these demands, the bill becomes very heavy in the end. If someone considers that he has the right to be on the level of the first month after being in the work for some years, he cannot pay the bill. Payment means, first of all, being able to meet demands. Demands always grow, and if you are behind your time, things will look below their right level to you, whatever they are in reality, because you are below level. But if you work, if you grow, you will be on the level of the demands. I am showing you the side from which it is possible to approach this question. Many things are necessary in an organization. Understanding, first of all, and effort. I suppose meeting the demands entails giving up some things, but I am puzzled about what they are. Do not worry. When it is necessary to give up something, it becomes quite clear. If you do not see what you have to give up, it means that it is not the time to think about it yet. Intellectual thinking about it is quite useless, for when you have to give up something, it never comes in the form of a puzzle. Maybe someday you will see some particular kind of negative emotion and will realize that if you want to keep it, you cannot work. Or it may be some kind of imagination, or something else of this kind. It always begins in this way. It seems paradoxical that we are trying to get free from laws and are putting ourselves under more. In order to get free, it is necessary to submit to many more laws for a certain time, for one can learn to be free only by obeying more laws. There are many reasons for this. One reason is that we are too lenient with ourselves. If we set ourselves a task, after some time we begin to make excuses, and then we deceive ourselves too much. So, as I said, if people want to continue to study, they must accept certain conditions. This means they must make the study practical. If people do not take work seriously enough, it is a waste of time. You have a right to go away, and I have a right to stop lectures, so there are no obligations on either side. I have other work to do, but my giving up my time to this is necessary, because it is the only way to establish a school. If I can say, if I die tomorrow, work will continue, it will mean that a school is established. If it depends wholly on me, it will mean that the school is not of sufficient strength. In a school, is it better to study only yourself and not other people? No, it is necessary to study other people also, but not only other people. Surely it is easier to be objective about other people than about oneself? No, it is more difficult. If you become objective to yourself, you can see other people objectively, but not before, because before that it will all be colored by your own views, attitudes, tastes, by what you like and what you dislike. To be objective, you must be free from it all. You can become objective to yourself in the state of self-consciousness. This is the first experience of coming into contact with the real object. Does one ever learn to administer shocks to oneself in order to work as one should? If you work on 3 lines, one line will give shocks to another. When you understand, not theoretically, but from observation, how one line helps another, you will find out. What I meant was, when one needs energy quickly for a special purpose, how can one get it? Is it by a shock? A good shock makes energy quickly, but shocks can be of 3 kinds. Somebody else can give it to you, or you can give it to yourself, or it may come accidentally. Nothing else can create energy quickly. A good shock can make you remember yourself and remember the shock. It may be so good that you will be unable to forget it for some time. That will make you more emotional, and the emotional center will produce energy. You said shocks can be accidental? Accidental shocks do not count. Things happen. People find money in the street, but you cannot rely on it. When we speak about giving shocks, we speak about conscious shocks. We must understand how things happen. We start to do something and then come to an interval without so much as realizing the existence of intervals or knowing about their possibilities. This is our situation. Before we come to the possibility of aiming and attaining, we must understand that this is very far from us, and we must study intervals in the given examples, such as the food diagram. By studying these intervals and the 2 conscious shocks which were explained, by learning to produce them, we may come to the possibility of quite a different kind of shock, but not before that. As a matter of fact, if we could produce enough necessary shocks that are strong enough, there would be practically nothing we could not attain. The only thing we need is shocks, but we cannot make them. Even if we think of them, we are not confident enough. We do not trust ourselves, do not know for certain that this shock will produce the desired effect. That is why organized work includes in itself many shocks, so it is not left to ourselves. We are so fast asleep that no shocks wake us. We do not notice them. Excuse me. Does the realization of mechanicalness give one choice in one's actions, or must one wait for will? I'll read that again. For myself more than anything. Does the realization of mechanicalness give one choice in one's action, or must one wait for will? I would say it gives choice. At the same time, it is wrong to think that when realization comes, it already brings the possibility and the power. One can know and not be able to do anything. It is a most difficult and unpleasant situation if one begins to see things and is unable to do anything. That is why in some cases it is better not to begin working unless one is ready to go on to the end. Otherwise, one may remain between two stools. The idea of choice is a contradictory idea. From one point of view, there is no choice. From a second point of view, there is choice. From a third, again, no choice, and all are true. It is a very complicated idea. For instance, in the work there is choice, but work is connected with life outside. Things may become so bad that there is no choice, and then perhaps there is a moment of choice, but if we miss it, we miss it. Is there any way to recognize these moments of choice? Only by trying to find these moments in the work, because this system is a method of acquiring new knowledge and power, and at the same time a means of exercising this knowledge and power. Here we have more possibility to choose. If we exercise it, then perhaps later we will be able to apply it to other things. This idea is connected with crossroads. Crossroads are moments when one can do. A moment comes when one can help in this work or not. If an opportunity comes and one misses it, another way may not come for a year perhaps, or even longer. If one does not arrange to use organized work, which may make a permanent opportunities. I'm going to read it again. If an opportunity comes and one misses it, another may not come for a year perhaps, or even longer. If one does not arrange to use organized work, which may make permanent opportunities. So yeah, when these opportunities for intense work and we have the energy and tap into the large accumulator, we should really use it, as Gurdjieff would say, as his old Nan told him in Beelzebub's Tales. If you're going to do anything, go the whole hog, even the postage, or even including the postage. And so, yeah, we should really, if you're going to work, then you may as well work seriously and not half-ass it, but continuing. Concerning work on the second line, is it necessary to ask for an opportunity? Everybody is given the opportunity. Only an individual person cannot organize work on the second line for himself. It must be arranged. In this connection, it was found by experience that physical work is very useful in school. In some schools there are special physical exercises, but in the absence of these, physical work takes their place. All this refers to the second line. It must be organized work. The idea is this. When a certain number of people work together in the house, in the garden, with animals and so on, it is not easy. Individually they can work, but working together is difficult. They are critical of one another. They get in one another's way. They take things from one another. It is very good help for self-remembering. If a person is interested in the idea, he can try it, but only if he feels the need of it. You must not think it is some kind of magical help. Work means action. Theoretically, work with other people is second line, but you must not think that being in the same room with other people or doing the same work is already second line. You do not know yet what the second line of work is. You said once that physical work is the way to make centers work properly. What did you mean by that? Physical work, not sport, but hard work, one kind for one person, another kind for another person, puts centers right. Centers are connected in a certain way and energies are distributed in a certain way. When people are idle, centers try to do another's work. But because of that, physical work is a very reliable method for making them work better. This method is largely used in schools. In modern life, particularly with some people, wrong work of centers saps all the energy. But of course, even in organized work, if one works with identification, it does not mean anything. What is the difference between physical work in ordinary life and organized physical work in a school? Working anywhere else is much easier. You give yourself more freedom to choose the way to do it. Suppose you work in your own garden. You will do the things you like doing and do them in your own way. You will choose your own tools, your own time, your own weather, everything. So you introduce very much self-will into it. In organized work, you have not only physical results, you also struggle with your self-will. Work does not cease to be dangerous by being specially organized, however, because in ordinary work, will always remains self-will, while in schoolwork, self-will spoils the whole thing, and not only for oneself, but also for other people. Self-will always knows better and always wants to do things in its own way. All organized work is a chance to work against self-will. Besides, organized physical work needs emotional effort. That is why physical work cannot really be called physical, because it is emotional as well. If it were only physical, it would not be so profitable. If there is no emotional effort in the physical work you are doing, you must either increase your speed or increase the time or the effort in order to make it emotional. Try to do some physical work harder and longer than you can do it with ease, and you will see that it requires an emotional effort. This is why physical work is important. What sort of emotional effort? You will see. We are now speaking of physical work connected with the system. It is under quite different laws. You do it for a different purpose, and you have to remember why you do it. Do some people need school and others not? School is for those who are prepared for school. The beginning of school work already means some preparation. In school, a new octave must begin. What is the duty of this personality, which was magnetic center? What can be required from it now? Valuation of the work, valuation of the system, and of everything connected with the system. If valuation is there, this personality will grow. If it is not there, it will not grow. Can one be identified with the school? That means losing the school. One can be identified with the school in many ways, by liking it too much, or criticizing it too much, or believing in it too much. Does school interfere with how you behave outside school? In relation to the school, your actions are controlled by rules. Outside school, you will find that it is also necessary to apply certain principles which you use in school. If you do not try to apply them whenever you can, it is useless to know them. Then, this is not a rule or a principle. You will find even outside school that if you want to do something, you must not do some other thing. In other words, you have to pay for everything, not in the sense of taking out money and paying it out, but by some kind of sacrifice. I do not like to use this word, but there is no other. In that way, it will involve all your life. Does the number of people in a school depend on the amount of knowledge produced? No. It depends on the number of people who have a certain being and who can look after other people, teach and instruct them, and so on. You think schools are like mushrooms in a wood, but they are very different from mushrooms. That's a rather strange analogy. You think schools are like mushrooms in a wood, but they are very different from mushrooms. Oh, I thought this was a mushroom. A school is the result of long work. Even if you take this room and us sitting here talking, it is the result of 30 years' work of many people, and maybe many more before them. This must be taken into account. Besides, knowledge in our sense means knowledge connected with the possibility of development of being. This knowledge must come from another school and must be valuable. Suppose I make you learn by heart the dates of birth of all French presidents. What use will that be? Yet very often this is called knowledge. Yes, learning by rote. Is the reason why this knowledge may not be given without payment because people who take it without payment will twist it? Simply because they will lose it, will throw it away, because valuation depends on payment. You cannot give a right valuation of a thing you do not pay for. If it comes too easily, you do not value it. This is one side, and another side of the question is that if you value a thing, you will not give it away to other people. What does valuation mean? If you realize what effort was put into it, how many people have worked, and for how long to give you this knowledge, you will not give it away for nothing, because first of all, it will not be useful to them if they have it, and secondly, why should they have it for nothing? It would be the greatest injustice, but this cannot happen because they cannot take it anyway. Well, lucky you, Bunny Man. What a way to be listening to book club live readings on the beach. As far as I understand, the main object of school is to produce Superman. I do not know about this producing Superman. This is not a Superman farm. What relationship has the idea of school with cosmic order? This school, a school in which you can be, is a very small thing. It may help you, but it is a very great presumption on our part to think that it has any cosmic meaning. It is very easy to understand the idea of school if you think simply about it. You want to have certain knowledge, and you cannot get it until you meet a school. I mean a school that has got this knowledge from another school, not knowledge invented by ordinary men. This is the only idea from which you can start. Some time ago you have mentioned men of higher mind from whom this knowledge comes. Do they actually live, and can we recognize them? We cannot recognize them if they do not wish to be recognized, but if they wish to, they can show that they are on a different level. If we meet people of a higher level, we shall not recognize their being, but we can recognize their knowledge. We know the limits of our knowledge, so we can see when somebody knows more than we do. This is all that is possible for us in our present state. But we cannot see whether another person is conscious or not, or more conscious than we are. He will look the same, or even, and this is particularly interesting, it often happens that people who are more developed may look less conscious, and we may take them to be more mechanical than we are. Do schools exist to have a general effect on other people not in schools, or is it entirely for their own reasons? I would say both, only there is no contradiction between the two things, because how can schools have an influence on people not in schools? Only by preparing them for school, in no other way. You see, the chief difficulty in understanding school systems is that they cannot be diluted too much. If they become diluted, they become their own opposites. They cease to mean anything, cease to have any purpose. Have not schools in the past influenced humanity? When schools influenced humanity, humanity was very small and schools very big. Now humanity is very big and schools very small. For instance, schools under the name of different mysteries influenced certain periods of Greek life, but Greece was a very small country. Egypt too was comparatively small, so it could be influenced. But how could this small school influence humanity at the present time? You ask without thinking. I remember Mr. Gurdjieff said that 200 conscious people could influence humanity. We calculated once what this would mean. Suppose one man number 7 exists in the world. He must have at least 100 pupils, because he cannot be in contact with lower degrees by himself. So if there is one man number 7, he must have at least 100 men number 6. Each of these men number 6 must have at least 100 men number 5, so that makes 10,000 men. Number 5. Each of these 10,000 men number 5 must have at least 100 men number 4, through whom he can have contact with other people, so there must be 1,000,000 men number 4. Each of these men number 4 must have at least 100 men number 1, 2, and 3, whom he knows and with whom he can work, so that will make 100 million men number 1, 2, and 3. This means that even if we suppose that 1,000 makes one school, there would be 100,000 schools. Well, we know definitely that there is no such number of schools, so it is impossible to expect a man number 7, because the existence of a man number 7 would mean that schools would control life. Even man number 6 would mean that schools control the world. This implies that men number 7 and number 6 would only be in the world in special conditions, and it would be seen and known because it would mean that life would be controlled by schools. And since we know that if there are schools now, they are very hidden, it cannot be so in our times. Final question. Do you mean that man number 7 cannot exist on this planet, or that he does not exist under present conditions? I did not say he cannot exist. I said we may have reason to think that he does not exist because his existence would show itself. But how? But it does not exclude the possibility that for some reason men number 7 may exist and not show themselves, only it is less probable. Another intense and knowledge-filled chapter from Ouspensky's The Fourth Way. We have made it through the reading without any technical glitches, so thanks everyone for your prayers and for crossing your fingers that we could do it. Excuse me. Tomorrow we'll be back with Dostoevsky's The Double. In the last reading, if you're not caught up in part 2, we actually encountered the double, and it's very interesting to consider, is it his subconscious, is it a real person, is it a premonition, who knows. But in this chapter 11 of The Fourth Way, I would say that the main takeaways, is our valuation of the work. How highly do we value it? How important is it for us? Of course, he went on very much about the 3 lines of work: work for oneself, work for the group, and then work for the work in general. And also, as in many other places in The Fourth Way, he talks about understanding, how important understanding is. And I would argue that understanding is, in a sense, the first effort that one can make. The effort to read the texts, the effort to understand the concepts, the effort to maybe talk to someone who knows more and get some clarification, read a related passage to increase understanding. You read a section from In Search of the Miraculous, then the related section from The Fourth Way. Those together really help increase understanding, and on and on and on. And then you can begin self-observation, self-remembering, non-identification, not expressing negative emotions. There's very much to do in this work, but as Ouspensky says, understanding is important and efforts are also important. Stephen Lance says, thank you very much for reading this because it is good for the brains. It certainly is, isn't it, Stephen Lane? The intellectual center gets a hell of a workout when it's reading Ouspensky, and we mustn't forget the other centers, the emotional and the physical. So perhaps what we could do to finish, I'm not going to do a whole long guided meditation, but if there's no more comments or questions, what you can take away, those watching and listening, to do with valuation of the work of Gurdjieff, Ouspensky, any other of the characters that are very sort of meaningful to you. Of course, we've already had an intellectual workout for the intellectual center, but what I would maybe say one could try, I'm going to say goodbye now, but when I say goodbye, maybe after the stream, have a very vivid sensation of your body and your breathing. So take several deep breaths, have a strong sensation of your body, and then sort of observe your emotions when you think about Mr. Gurdjieff, Mr. Ouspensky, any of the other characters, whoever your favorite character is, you could say. I know many people enjoy Fritz Peters, the De Hartmans, Maurice Nicole, don't need to name them all, or just the work in general, The Fourth Way, how it's benefited your life. So have a sensation of your body, think about the work, how you value it, Gurdjieff, any of the books, whatever it might be, and sort of wake up or connect with the other 2 centers and see how you feel, see what you experience, observe those impressions, and let me know if you want to reach out and talk about that. I'll be happy to hear it. But for now, I'll say thanks everyone for joining. Hallelujah. We've managed to get through chapter 11 with third time lucky. I'll say thanks all for being here and for your attention, for your efforts in working through this chapter. If you've been following every line, you've, as Stephen said, your brain and your intellectual center has had a strong and good workout. But as I've just said, don't forget the physical center and the emotional center, and you can try that exercise that I've just said if that's interesting for you. If not, well, do whatever you like. But for now, I'll say thanks everyone for joining. It's great to be back, and we'll be back tomorrow, same time, with a continuation of the double. And I hope to be able to finish the double next week so we can bring in some new texts. So much coming up here at the channel. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Share it on your social media, the show, because it's the easiest way to support and to help us grow. But I will say thanks everyone for being here. It's always a pleasure. Look after yourselves. Take care. And I hope to see you tomorrow evening for Dostoevsky's The Double. Good night, Sophia. Flippity gibbets. Everyone watching and listening, good night, take care, and I'll see you soon.